What's going on, guys? It's Greg here, aka NYPrepper. It is Monday, January 5th, 2026, and I have some breaking news to share with you guys. Right now it is 15:06 Eastern Time here in the United States, and we have some major breaking news coming in from Iran and Venezuela and Europe. So it looks like something big is about to go down. I don't know what exactly is going to happen, but we do have some indications from various sources that something is about to go down. So what you're looking at here is a live flight tracker showing a U.S. Air Force aerial refueler flying very low and looping over Whiteman Air Force Base, which is the home of U.S. B-2 stealth bombers. This plane just was scrambled into the air about an hour ago from Topeka, Kansas. And you can see here it is now doing these low loops near Whiteman Air Force Base, literally right over the base, which could mean that stealth bombers are airborne right now, okay? Now, in addition to that, earlier this morning around 10 a.m. Eastern Time, we had a large number of U.S. nuclear targeting codes transmitted on the primary U.S. nuclear war frequency. And last night, we had an insane spike in the Pentagon Pizza Index. I'll show you guys that in just a minute. There's also a spike right now in the Pizza Index. But listen to this. I'm just going to play a small sample of all of these nuclear targeting codes that were transmitted by U.S. nuclear forces earlier this morning around 10 a.m. They were going back to back nonstop for about an hour and a half. Absolutely insane. And they were just going on and on like this, so I'm not going to play the whole thing because we'd be sitting here for an hour and a half, but literally nonstop. These are codes that are going out to U.S. nuclear forces. So something could be going down in the next couple of hours or the next couple of days. And we're hearing reports from Lebanese sources that apparently Trump and Netanyahu agreed during their meeting over the holidays that an attack against Iran will be launched if no agreement is reached according to American conditions. They're talking about an agreement on disarming Iran's ballistic missiles and the remainder of their nuclear program. Okay, so far since the U.S. bombed Iran, Iran has refused to sign any kind of deal that would mandate them to surrender their nuclear materials and dismantle their ballistic missiles. So a Lebanese news outlet affiliated with Hezbollah, so you got to take that with a grain of salt, says that Trump and Netanyahu agreed during their meetings that they will launch strikes on Iran if Iran does not surrender their nuclear weapons, okay? And interesting how these stealth bombers are now potentially airborne and getting refueled today. So something is definitely going on. We know that there's a coup d'etat underway in Iran right now. And unfortunately, I can't share the footage from that because it's very violent. But last night in the live stream, I was showing everyone this incident in western Iran where a whole crowd of protesters were mowed down by machine gun fire from Iranian security forces. And remember what Trump said. Trump said, if Iran starts killing protesters, the U.S. will come to their rescue. He said that the military is ready to do that, okay? So it looks like the U.S. is potentially getting ready to decapitate the Iranian regime, to maybe capture Khamenei or something else. We also had this large movement of U.S. military equipment to Europe last night. I'm going to update you guys on that. As many as 14 C-17 Globemasters flew across the Atlantic to Europe in the last 2 days, which is extremely unusual. And the most unusual thing about it is that most of them came from Fort Campbell, Kentucky, which is a known base for the 160th Special Operations Air Regiment, which is the same regiment that was involved in the operation to capture Maduro. So does that mean we're going to capture Khomeini now? I don't know. All right. And Israeli sources are now reporting that the Israeli military is preparing for simultaneous wars with Iran, Hezbollah, and West Bank terrorists. The Israeli military has been ordered to prepare for the possibility of a simultaneous multi-front war against Iran, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and armed groups in the West Bank, according to a report from Israel's Channel 12. One scenario under consideration includes what was described as an explosive operation targeting Tehran itself. Security officials believe Iran may seek to launch an attack on Israel preemptively to divert attention from the protests and prevent what they fear could become a collapse of the Islamic Republic. Okay, so Iran could get desperate and try to just launch missiles at Israel now, okay, because they don't want the Islamic Republic of Iran to collapse and not be under the control of Khomeini or his heirs, okay? They don't want Iran to become a Western-friendly country. They want Iran to be this hardline Islamic country that's friendly with Russia and China. So Israel's concerned that Iran could lash out now and do some kind of crazy attack at the last minute, all right, before the regime collapses. And some reports are coming out this morning from the Israeli military stating that Iran, together with other hostile actors, are actively working to assassinate the new president of Syria, Ahmad al-Sharaa. The warning was issued recently amid renewed negotiations between Israel and Syria. Intelligence reports indicate that al-Sharaa is facing real threats, forcing him to allocate significant resources to his personal security and to stabilizing his regime. Okay, so the president of Syria could potentially get assassinated by Iran, according to Israeli intelligence. Now, in addition to all those nuclear codes this morning, we also had some unusual either antenna tuning or some kind of short-term data transfer on the primary U.S. nuclear war frequency. These like strange beeping sounds were broadcasting intermittently for a couple of minutes. Here's an example of one of them. And they just kept doing that for a couple of minutes with like a 15 to 30 second break in between those beeps. We also have some very concerning news coming in that apparently the Israeli War Cabinet has agreed on a new military operation called Operation Iron Strike. The Israeli War Cabinet discussed the most suitable day and time for this attack. The target and details of the operation have not been disclosed. So yesterday, the Israeli War Cabinet met, okay, and they agreed on this operation, and we don't know who it's going to be targeting. Is it going to be Iran? Is it Lebanon? We know that there were some strikes this morning against Lebanon, but the Israeli defense minister and the Israeli chief of staff practiced a war game against Iran yesterday, some kind of tabletop exercise, okay? So things are really escalating over there. And according to Amichai Stein of Israeli Channel 15, the IRGC in Iran has begun a military exercise involving the launch of missiles and testing of air defense systems. The exercise is being conducted in several cities, including Tehran and Shiraz. So Iran suddenly testing their air defenses and their missiles. Okay, so another sign that something's about to go down in Iran. Also, Russia delivered a large number of Mi-28 attack helicopters to Iran in recent days, and this was done through continuous flights of Russian cargo planes to Iran. So attack helicopters, probably to quell the riots or protests in Iran. And we're hearing that the protests have spread to 108 towns and cities across Iran. And here you can see a list of all the C-17s that flew to Europe from Fort Campbell. Okay, this is very unusual. This was literally 24 hours after they captured Maduro. All these planes affiliated with the 160th Special Operations Regiment flew to Europe, okay? And right now, in addition to that aerial refueler looping over Whiteman Air Force Base, we also have 2 nuclear war command and control planes up in the air. And then we also have 2 aerial refuelers that are looping over Scott Air Force Base in southern Illinois. Now, Scott Air Force Base, if you're not aware, is a strategic airlift base, okay? So that's where, like, very important operations are flown from, especially related to airlift, okay? Strategic airlift. And also, last night, we had 2 aerial refuelers go across the Atlantic to Europe from Scott Air Force Base, which is that strategic airlift base, okay? So something is definitely going on for them to be moving aerial refuelers from Scott Air Force Base to Europe in the middle of the night. There was also a Doomsday plane airborne yesterday evening that flew from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base to the D.C. area. The Doomsday plane is for the president and also for the defense secretary. They can command the entire U.S. military and nuclear arsenal from the air. And then we also had a nuclear war command and control plane that was scrambled out into the Atlantic at the same time. All these flights at the same time. And here you can see this 1,200% spike at Papa John's Pizza, just 2 miles from the Pentagon late last night. 1,250% spike, and then a 313% spike at the same time at the District Pizza Place. And then earlier this afternoon, we had Domino's Pizza spiking 400%. And then late last night, right before closing time, at Pizzado's Pizza, there was a 330% spike in activity. Okay, so the Pentagon is definitely busy, and I don't think it's just related to Maduro. And Venezuela ordered a nationwide mobilization of their military today, declaring a state of emergency to counter what they called an imperialist attack. The government said it would move toward armed resistance following strikes it blamed on the U.S., urging all political and social forces to mobilize. Okay, so a massive mobilization is underway in Venezuela. They're showing defiance against the United States. And the Venezuelan police have been ordered to find and arrest anybody involved in supporting the United States. So I have some pictures of Venezuelan police randomly stopping people. There's also the Venezuelan militia that has been mobilized now. So there's paramilitary forces now in Venezuela setting up checkpoints, arresting people, searching people. All right, so the situation is not over. Yes, we captured Maduro, but there's paramilitary forces that are still in control of Venezuela. The vice president of Venezuela is commanding the military there, and she is demanding the release of Maduro. So we may have to go back into Venezuela, okay? But we know there's paramilitary forces deploying, militia groups, and also the Venezuelan police. And Venezuelan opposition sources, that's opposition sources that are against Maduro and his regime, are warning of checkpoints across Venezuela where phones are being searched. Okay? And the president of Colombia dared President Trump to get him like he did Maduro. He said, "Come get me, coward. I'm waiting for you here." Wow. And this came after Trump said yesterday that he may go into Colombia and take the president of Colombia and arrest him. Okay, so wow, come get me, coward. I'm waiting for you here. All right, so absolutely insane. And Maduro has hired Barry Pollock, the lawyer of WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange, for his court case. And Maduro's first statements at court today in New York were, quote, "I am the president of Venezuela and I consider myself a prisoner of war. They captured me in my house in Caracas," Maduro said. Okay, so he's still saying he's the president, considers himself a prisoner of war, and his first official hearing will be on March 17th, and he pled not guilty to all charges, and his wife also pled not guilty, saying that she is completely innocent. And here we have the flight paths of more C-17s that arrived in Europe last night. You can see two of them here going across the Atlantic, and then the two aerial refuelers from Scott Airfield, and then here's two other C-17s. So I tracked at least 4 that went over the Atlantic last night, and then the night before there were 10. And then here we have pictures in Venezuela of these paramilitary forces, or potentially Venezuelan secret police, setting up these checkpoints. They look like police, actually, based by the vehicles there that are parked. They have some official markings on them. So the Venezuelan police is setting up checkpoints here. And then here's another picture of them searching people's vehicles. Okay, so there's no immediate end to the Maduro regime. Even though Maduro was captured, the regime still lives on, which means we're going to have to go back in there. And then here we have video footage of the leader of the Venezuelan militia, the People's Militia. Okay, he's the general of the militia there, and he's basically saying that they're mobilizing, full-scale mobilization. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens, but this is not over by any means. And then here's a video of the defense minister of Venezuela stating that they demand the U.S. release Maduro, and you can see him surrounded by all his generals. And yesterday we learned of reports that the leader of Iran is now planning to flee to Russia. The plan B is for Khamenei and his very close circle of associates and family, including his son and the heir apparent, according to an intelligence source. And this was reported by the UK Times. An intelligence report cited by the Times claims that Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, has prepared a contingency plan to flee Tehran, potentially to Moscow, if nationwide unrest escalates and security forces begin to defect or disobey orders. The report says the plan involves a small inner circle, pre-positioned assets abroad, and draws on the precedent of Bashar al-Assad's flight to Russia. So they're going to model it after Assad and how Assad left Syria, reflecting concerns about Khamenei's declining health, isolation during recent protests, and fears that loyalty within the security apparatus could fracture amid mounting economic hardship and public anger. Okay, so this is a very serious situation, guys. Iran has a massive amount of ballistic missiles. They have a large military, lots of military equipment, and whoever takes over Iran after Khamenei, if they're more hardline than him, that could be a problem. You know, ideally they would be more Western friendly, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. Is the U.S. going to go in and bombard Iran's military bases and try to capture him or take him out? It seems like that's what's going to happen. And some more details about all these planes that flew overseas. So over 10 U.S. Air Force C-17 heavy cargo planes arrived at RAF Fairford in the UK on January 3rd and 4th. They reportedly delivered several MH-60 Black Hawk and MH-47 Chinook helicopters, plus support gear belonging to the U.S. Army's 160th SOAR, Special Operations Aviation Unit. After unloading, many of these C-17s flew empty or very light to Ramstein Air Force Base in Germany. And starting on January 4th, at least 6 to 8 different C-17s flew from various European bases to U.S. bases in the Middle East. Destinations included Al Udeid in Qatar and the Salti base in Jordan. And Finland caught a Russian ship dragging its anchor across undersea cables, and then they found sanctioned cargo on board. Finnish authorities seized the cargo vessel Fitberg on New Year's Eve after catching it dragging its anchor along the Baltic seabed, severing 2 critical telecommunications cables connecting Finland and Estonia. The Finnish border guard tracked the ship dragging its anchor for dozens of kilometers. This mirrors an identical incident in late 2024 with another vessel, the Eagle S. Finnish customs found the ship was carrying Russian structural steel prohibited under EU sanctions. Wow. Okay, so it dragged its anchor for several dozens of kilometers. Okay, and we're also hearing something similar coming from Latvia. Latvian state police boarded a vessel in the port of Liepāja after damage was discovered to a private company's undersea optical fiber cable in the Baltic Sea. This incident came just 5 days after Finnish authorities seized a cargo ship suspected of sabotaging a telecom cable between Helsinki and Estonia. So Russia is slowly trying to cut off the Baltics from the rest of Europe and cut off their communications. So this way, if they invade, the Baltics won't have any way of communicating with the rest of NATO. This is clearly preparations for a war, okay? And here we have some footage coming out of Iran showing all the protesters shouting death to Khamenei. So take a listen. Look at this crowd, guys. This is a huge crowd of people. But like I said, the Iranian security forces have already opened fire on these protesters. And Trump told reporters last night that he does not believe the alleged attack by Ukraine against the residence of Russian President Putin actually happened. A sharp departure from comments made by Trump last week after a phone call with Putin. So Trump is now saying that Ukraine did not try to attack Putin's residence. And the New York Times reported yesterday, citing 2 U.S. officials, that Trump's final straw for capturing Maduro was Maduro's dancing. Maduro's regular dancing infuriated Trump and Trump officials, which they took as a sign of mockery and disrespect. They thought it was an attempt to call Trump's bluff. And a Russian Igla man-pads system was fired at U.S. SOCOM forces that were landing at Maduro's compound to capture Maduro, which ended up causing minor damage to one of the U.S. helicopters. And we're hearing now that some U.S. soldiers were injured in the operation to capture Maduro, but they're in stable and good condition, a senior White House official told CNN. And apparently sanctioned oil tankers have fled Venezuela in recent days, attempting to evade a U.S. naval blockade by disguising their identities, spoofing locations, or shutting off tracking signals. Okay, so they're fleeing now because they don't want to be captured. And satellite imagery showed at least 4 vessels sailing east using fake names, while a dozen others have disappeared from monitoring systems altogether. The departures followed the U.S. capture of Maduro and came without authorization from Venezuela's interim government. So this is a huge geopolitical chess move. The U.S. seizing control of the world's largest oil supply. Okay, Venezuela has the largest proven oil reserves of any country on earth, more than Saudi Arabia. They have 300 billion barrels of oil reserves, compared to Saudi Arabia has like 260. So even more than Saudi Arabia, and Iran has like 200, Iraq has like 150. So Trump essentially secured the oil supply for the U.S. for the next 50 years, okay, to meet the needs of the U.S. military and the U.S. public. So this is a huge chess move. It's also denying China the oil that they desperately need. So now China is going to be reliant 100% on Russian oil, and soon they're not even going to be able to get Iranian oil if Iran collapses. And the death toll in Venezuela from the U.S. operation has now risen to 80, according to Venezuelan sources. And Trump threatened the Venezuelan vice president yesterday, saying if she doesn't do the right thing, she's going to pay a very high price, probably higher than Maduro. And he said this in an interview with The Atlantic. The Chinese foreign minister says Beijing cannot accept any country acting as a world judge. And U.S. Delta Force eliminated a significant part of Maduro's security guards. And apparently these security guards were mostly Cuban. And this was confirmed by the Cuban president, who said that 32 Cuban soldiers were killed trying to protect Maduro. So very interesting. And I want to just play some clips from Air Force One of Trump talking about everything going on so you can hear what he said. He talked about Colombia and going after Colombia.
Venezuela is very sick. Colombia is very sick, too, run by a sick man who likes making cocaine and selling it to the United States. And he's not going to be doing it very long, let me tell you.
What does that mean? He's not going to be doing it very long.
He's not doing it very long. He has cocaine mills and cocaine factories. He's not going to be doing it very long.
So there will be an operation by the U.S. and
It sounds
Colombia?
good to me. Yeah.
So the reporter asked, so there's going to be an operation by the U.S. to take the president of Colombia, and he said, sounds good to me, but he warned Colombia's president that he's not going to be producing cocaine and selling it to the U.S. anymore. So, and then that's when the Colombian president said, come get me, coward. Here's another clip of Trump.
Rubio mentioned Cuba yesterday in his remarks. Does the U.S. have a plan to do something?
Well, Cuba always survived because of Venezuela. Now they won't have that money coming in. They won't have the income coming in. You know, a lot of Cubans were killed yesterday. You know that. A lot of Cubans were killed.
Do you know how many?
The bodyguards. No, they're looking. But there was a lot of death on the other side. No death on our side.
So apparently no death on our side, but a lot of death on the other side.
Venezuela is very sick. Colombia is very sick.
And Trump stated in a January 4th interview with The Atlantic that the recent U.S. military operation in Venezuela may not be the last instance of American intervention. He emphasized the strategic importance of Greenland, declaring we do need Greenland absolutely, and justifying it on national security grounds by claiming the island is quote-unquote surrounded by Russian and Chinese ships. Trump reiterated his wish to take over Greenland. He said, quote, we do need Greenland absolutely. We need it for defense, he told the magazine. Later that night, Trump again told reporters aboard Air Force One, quote, we need Greenland from the standpoint of national security, and Denmark is not going to be able to do it. We'll worry about Greenland in about 2 months, Trump added. Let's talk about Greenland in 20 days. And the Prime Minister of Denmark on Sunday called on Trump to stop the threats about taking over Greenland. Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen said in a statement on Sunday that it makes absolutely no sense to talk about the need for the U.S. to take over Greenland. The U.S. has no right to annex any of the 3 nations in the Danish kingdom, she said, adding, I would therefore strongly urge the U.S. stop the threats against a historically close ally and against another country and another people who have very clearly said they are not for sale. Wow. And Japan deployed combat aircraft to Europe. The mission, dubbed Atlantic Eagles, included not only F-15J fighter jets, but also transport assets, personnel, and planners, and covered Canada, the UK, and Germany. The primary goal was to conduct joint exercises and improve interoperability with NATO. So Japan sending fighter jets and support aircraft to Europe to do joint exercises. Sounds like we're preparing for World War. And for the first time ever, a Russian Shahed drone equipped with a MANPADS was found in Ukraine. The drone reportedly carried a camera and radio modem and was remotely controlled from Russia, marking a potentially new and dangerous escalation in drone warfare. So a MANPADS is a man-portable air defense. So it's like a Stinger missile. It's a shoulder-fired rocket launcher, essentially, that can lock on to various aerial targets and shoot them down. Well, the Russians have managed to essentially just like bolt it onto one of the drones that they use to attack Ukraine. And so now the Russians, if this proves successful, they could be deploying these Shahed drones with these man-portable air defenses mounted to them so they can shoot these missiles at incoming air defense interceptors from Ukraine that are fired to shoot the drones down, and they can also launch these missiles at helicopters or fighter jets that Ukraine deploys to try to shoot the drones down. So it kind of turns these drones into like fighter jets in a sense. And the German newspaper Bild reported that Greek airspace was completely closed down last night for a short period of time due to an unknown failure of all communication systems. But that's the latest breaking news that I have. I'll probably be back later on tonight with a live update around 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And until the next time, follow me on Twitter. I've been posting updates throughout the day on Twitter. Also, follow me on Patreon. And you can also download my free app from the Google Play Store, and it lets me send out updates to your phone throughout the day so you never miss anything. And until the next time, take care, God bless, and don't forget the 3 Ps. Prepare, practice, and persevere. And before I continue with the breaking news, I wanted to mention the sponsor for this update, which is My Patriot Supply. Guys, My Patriot Supply is doing a massive sale on their 3-month emergency food supply. And to get the deal, you got to use my link. It's in the description below this video. It's preparewithNYPrepper.com. So they're selling their 3-month emergency food kit at 30% off. Plus, they're going to throw in an additional month of food. So that's 4 months of food. And the normal price would be $944. And they're selling it at just under $700 for 4 months of food. And this food has a 25-year shelf life. And it's all packed into rugged, watertight buckets that don't take up a lot of space in your home. And the food is obviously nutritious, which is very important for surviving any kind of SHTF situation. You can also use this food for camping and traveling. But use the link preparewithNYPrepper.com to get a free month of emergency food with your 3-month emergency food kit from My Patriot Supply, all at 30% off, just $700 for 4 months of food. So use the link preparewithnyprepper.com to get the deal, and the link is in the description below this video.